All right, so welcome to the Whole Body Migraine Assessment call. So the purpose of these videos is to help you to understand that migraines are a much more complex and comprehensive condition than the conventional medical approach recognizes or addresses. The conventional approach is more of kind of a haphazard, like here are the medication options that we have, let's try them and see which works. But this is actually really a heartbreaking thing because we know so much about the biochemistry behind migraines that if we just do a little assessment into some of the symptoms that you're exhibiting, some of the labs that you have information on, we can actually see in many cases what is contributing to the migraines and work on fixing that. So the problem is that it takes a little bit of time. It takes some individualized care. It takes the doctor asking questions and being able to put these puzzle pieces together and not just focusing on brain or neurology, but looking at the gut and at hormones and at stress levels and diet and all of the above. So that's the purpose of these. So in the Whole Body Migraine Assessment, I'm reviewing information that is shared by whoever it is that signed up. I'm evaluating them based on the symptom picture that is coming out to me from the symptoms that they share based on their answers. And I'm looking for what those, the patterns that those symptoms reveal to me. And so then that will help us to understand a little bit more about the underlying biochemical imbalances that are contributing and some of the things that they can do to help to resolve their migraines and actually allow their body to heal. So let's see, today we have Rebecca C. Okay. So Rebecca C her migraine started about 3 years ago. She has about 8 a month. She's not quite sure if hormones are playing a role, although as we've seen in previous videos, if you're a woman and you have migraines, hormones are playing a role to some level. Meds, all the medications that she tries has not worked, but what does work is a combination of Aleve and coffee. An extra coffee will sometimes lessen the intensity of the migraine. She usually gets them, they come on at about 4 a.m. and she sometimes has watery eyes in the springtime. All right. So here's what I'm hearing from this application from her, what she shared with us. So number one, Rebecca, you definitely have a vasoactive component to your migraines. What that means is that your blood vessels, when they get big, that will trigger a migraine when they get too big, vasodilation. But also it sounds like because coffee tends to make it worse, it sounds like also vasoconstriction plays a role for you. So in some cases, when we have too much vasoconstriction or too much vasodilation, both of those can trigger a migraine. More commonly, it's just the vasodilation, but it can be both. And it sounds like for you, it possibly is relating to both. So one of the things that we want to take a look at is how arginine, which is it's an amino acid found in food, and it is a precursor to a chemical in our body called nitric oxide that causes vasodilation to occur. So one of the things that we're going to want to take a look at is how much arginine are you eating throughout the day on the days that you have your migraines. And you might be able to tolerate, the same amount, like have the exact same meal on this day, but then we're looking at a day around ovulation and you suddenly have a migraine. So remembering that it can be multiple pieces to the puzzle. So just kind of keep an eye on that. You can Google some foods that are higher in arginine and see what comes up with that. Number two, the fact that the Aleve helps tells me that there's an inflammatory component to it. So there might be something that you're exposed to, either a chemical in your environment, something you're drinking in your water, something you're eating on a regular basis that is contributing to a level of inflammation in your body. So that's something to take a look at and try to figure out what that is. In a lot of cases, most of the time what I see is inflammation is secondary to our diet. So taking a look at some of the food that we're eating, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's unhealthy food. You might be completely, vegetarian and sugar-free and, non-packaged whole foods, everything. But if you yourself have an issue with apples, with flax seeds and with dairy, and you're eating all of those on a regular basis, that's going to keep you inflamed. So doing something like an elimination diet or doing some food testing could be helpful to determine what those things might be. But there is an inflammatory component, which there is not in everybody. In a lot of cases there are, but not in everybody. So, but this is going to be a piece for you. The waking at 4 a.m. really gives us a lot of information. So there's a few things that could be going on when you first wake up and you have a migraine. Number one, evaluate whether or not you snore and or if sleep apnea might be an issue for you. So snoring is definitely not diagnostic for sleep apnea. You can have sleep apnea without snoring, but it can be an indicator. So taking a look at that piece and or talking to your doctor about being evaluated for sleep apnea. So that's number one. Number two, when it's first thing in the morning, it could be low serotonin. So serotonin levels will drop in the morning. It's one of the earliest times that we have it. Rebecca, an interesting question, a follow-up question for you would be, do you notice that your migraines are triggered by weather changes and darker, gloomier weather? That's another indication that serotonin is at play. And or do you notice that you feel really depressed either right before or during a migraine? Yes, it can be related to the fact that, oh crap, I have another migraine. But in a lot of situations, what I see is it's actually that serotonin, that drop in serotonin is actually what's triggering the depression that comes on with the migraine. So we think it's relating to the migraine because of the pain and having another migraine, when in reality, it's the neurotransmitter changes that cause the migraine that are causing the depression symptoms as well. It's kind of it's a nitpicky kind of difference, but it's a big and an important difference. So it could be a low serotonin issue, in which case then we'd want to do things that we can to help support serotonin production in the body. And, there are certain supplements and things you can talk to your doctor about that. Number three thing that I typically think of when it's a first waking headache or migraine is low cortisol. So cortisol plays a big role in how we feel throughout the day, and drops in cortisol, we know science has shown that it triggers migraines. And so if we're not having our morning cortisol spike that we should be having, a lot of times that first morning migraine will be triggered by the fact that we didn't have the spike that our body needs, and that in itself can trigger a migraine. So if those migraines work with triptans, I'd be a little bit more suspicious that it's a serotonin based thing. If it's less effective, because you said that meds don't really seem to work very well for you, then I would say it's most likely going to be more related to maybe the cortisol piece and or sleep apnea. So the last piece that I will leave you with from the answers that you shared, the fact that you have a runny eyes, runny nose in springtime, a follow-up question for that would be seasonal allergies. You have seasonal allergies. If the answer is yes, then track how your migraines are worsened during that seasonal allergy time. And if you definitely notice an uptick, then histamine is going to be a problem for you. And that would probably be true throughout the rest of the year, although less intense if you're out of seasonal allergy time. So then taking a look at low histamine diet, taking a look at how your body can improve its processing of histamine can make a big difference in the number of migraines that you have through the month. All right, so one of the things that I always like to point out at the end of these videos is that we don't want to just eliminate or find medications based on this information, right? Because once we've identified those underlying triggers and we get rid of them for the short term, we can actually heal the body so that it is now able to take care of the imbalances on its own. We can work on the pathways involved with serotonin. We can work on helping to support the adrenals to improve cortisol production. We can work on helping to correct the sleep apnea, if that's a thing. We can work on how your body is able to detoxify and break down histamine, and we can clear that out. There are protocols for all of those things. And so once we support those biochemical imbalances, our body actually starts to heal, and then we no longer need medication. We no longer need to avoid histamine foods. We no longer need to avoid, the fun things that we like to do, because our body is going to be able to adapt at that point. Right. So it's not just the evaluate and the eliminate, it's the alleviate. It's that healing piece that is always missing from a conventional approach. We will never, ever have our lives back until we work on the healing part. So that's super important. So take the information here. You can do a little bit of digging. If you're interested in talking a little bit further about how I can help with that, then you absolutely can reach out and schedule a consultation. We can have a conversation about that as well. But no matter what route you go, we want to make sure you're not just eliminating, because we see it all the time. You eliminate one thing, you feel better for a short period of time, and then suddenly things come right back. And suddenly you're eliminating yourself into this small corner and you can't do anything. You can't eat anything. Everything that gives you a migraine, you live in fear about what is going to be triggering the next one, right? And that will happen when we don't address those underlying issues. So we want to make sure that we're getting to that. So if anybody watching this wants more information about this type of individualized biochemical approach and understands how a whole body approach is really what we need to do to understand exactly what's causing your migraines, then I invite you to watch my free training. So the link is in the description below this video. And then if that approach is something that you've been looking for in your migraine care, you can definitely reach out to me and we can have a conversation about what that might look like for you. All right, until next time.